Morning, everybody. Happy fall, although it doesn't feel like it because it's really, really nice out still. Today we are talking about the exciting world of de-accessioning. Um, it's something that nobody wants to talk about, but everybody should be talking about. And yeah, but we're always here to answer any questions about it in general, just even aside from terms of the database project. Um, basically, let me move this guy over a little bit and look at my notes. I mean, most of you guys are familiar with this to a point or have had other workshops and things. So, but it's always good for a refresher in case other questions come up. De-accessioning in general can be kind of a hot button topic in museums. And even though it's a necessary thing to do and keep track of, and it's actually part of the natural life cycle of museums in many cases. The oops. Okay, thanks, Cheryl. I'll take a look. Which one? The last one? There's one more
This is the
apparently.
first one the abandoned property law link was not working for
Oh,
me.
I didn't replace it. I noticed that and I didn't replace it. I'll change that. Yeah, there's
Okay,
an
no worries.
extra sheet in like the in the newsletter.
I got it for you. I'll put it in the chat.
Cool. Yeah, I had it. Oh, thank you. Thank
Yep.
you. I was looking at too many references and resources this morning. Anyway, so there's AAM's link is really interesting because it starts out with one of the reasons that de-accessioning is kind of that hot button topic. It there was an instance with the Berkshire Museum a few years ago wanting to de-accession stuff to be able to pay for facilities and lights on and stuff like that. In general, collections are for the public trust, kept for the public trust, which means that it's there to make available to the public and not just to have a profit loss. There's great information in the AAM link that is now fixed about when you should de-accession, why you should de-accession, things like that. When you're looking at de-accessions for de-accessioning things, it's not to keep the lights on, it's not to make money so you can pay your staff. Any money made from de-accessioning, selling at auction, selling in general, needs to go back to the collections. They need to go back to direct care for the collections, not replacing, but like obtaining new items for the collections, not just for making sure the garbage is being picked up weekly or something like that. There's a lot of different factors into de-accessioning and why you should address it. Sometimes an object is no longer exhibitable. It's in really poor condition, and is in such poor condition that it can't even necessarily serve as a research item. I will show you one of the things from my collection that I am making a list of de-accession staff. There we go. Because I knew we had some of these in the collection, but I did not, haven't done anything about them yet. And I know it's been sitting there, they're sitting in a drawer. This is probably used to be a hair comb. It's cellulose nitrate, which that kind of material has inherent vice. It will do this and just kind of disintegrate. I don't know if it'll show my next one. Oh yeah, and things like this. There's nothing that really can be done with this from a conservation angle. This one, it was also probably some kind of hair comb. This one doesn't even have a number in the little baggie to see what it is. And this one still had a tag with it. This one still has a little tag. So I can look it up in my sketchy inventory records to see what they were calling it at the time. This one too. This one also has a little note about when and where it came in, which is handy if my record on this doesn't have it. But this kind of material is obviously it's in poor condition. The item itself is not going to do you any good. It's also can be a danger to the rest of the collections around it. You can see this piece of paper is all like flaky and falling apart. That's from the off-gassing of this item falling apart. There's, I'll arrow back. I was going to show you a couple, but I'll arrow back to one that's really, this one, I don't know what was in here. It's completely disintegrated practically to dust. The only thing I can see is there used to be in one of the Fairfield envelopes in there, and everything is just gone. Some of the pictures, as I'm showing you, they're hard to see because of, they're still in the bags. I'm not taking these out of the bags. The fumes and the off-gassing from these are not good for you. I have another group of material that I found. This is slowly turning into a, dangers of your collections webinar. I have another drawer of stuff that has a box of things in even worse condition. And I honestly forgot that box was there until I was going to deal with this stuff. And I'm not going to touch that until it's a nice day outside with like no wind, because I am not opening those bags up in the museum. And some of them I do need to open to be able to see what some of those little tags say, because there's too much stuff covering it. And I'm still just trying to keep a good record. I'm not going to put my health at risk by opening it inside and inhaling all the fumes. I'm literally just going to take it and sit at a table outside and do it on a nice, quiet, windless day. So anyway, this kind of thing, yeah, de-accession this. You're not going to be able to do anything to it. It's not going to do you or anybody else any good. And the opposite side of that, it could do you harm, because it is really not a great thing to have around in your collections. Cellulose nitrate can be flammable as well. That's more so, well, not even more so. That's very much a case when dealing with film, old movie film, not like Super 8 and that kind of thing necessarily, but like older 35 millimeter reels. So it's something that can cause harm to your collection, can cause harm to your staff. De-accession it. There's no good reason to keep it, even if it was, a hair comb owned by Queen Elizabeth the first, don't keep it. Document it, take pictures, look at your records, and de-accession it and dispose of it properly. Let me say, other reasons to de-accession aside from actual danger. The item may no longer meet the museum's collections policy parameters or your mission. You may have been a Fairfield, a museum in Fairfield that decided to take care of all of Fairfield County and the whole western half of the state. We never were. I'm just using that as an example. But now we focus down on just Fairfields. We do kind of use a greater Fairfield thing every once in a while, but there's a lot of items in the collection that just don't relate to our mission anymore. We don't know that they were from Fairfield or owned by Fairfield people or made in Fairfields. So it's nothing that we necessarily want. And you guys all know we all have a ton of collections that didn't really have criteria that of a certain type for you to accept it. People would just walk up and go, here's my old stuff. You guys should take it. And our predecessors all went, oh my gosh, it's old. Thanks. Yeah, we're totally going to take it. Without either knowing your story or knowing any resource or reference or anything like that to it. So it may no longer meet your criteria, it may never have. So that's something to take into consideration. There's also, the museum can no longer take care of the item in the way it should be taken care of. One example, another Fairfield example that I have is, let me go to my page and see if I can find which one I did. It's over here. No, it's over here. Sorry. Oh, there we go. This guy. Let me share again. So this was an item in Fairfield's collection. It's a racing sleigh. Super cool. We know who owned it, where it came from. It was actually owned by prominent family in Bridgeport. And it's in pretty good condition, honestly. The thing is, we moved offsite storage locations, and we did not have, the new location is better than the old location in many ways, but we did not have a way to get this sleigh into that location. It's too wide. It's about 4 feet wide exactly. Pretty, it's longer than that, maybe 5 feet, 6 feet long, something like that. Wouldn't have made the corners, wouldn't have made the doorways, couldn't do it. We also honestly don't really have any vision of when we might use it. Because getting it into the museum would also be a little bit of a problem, and into any of the galleries. So, it was something that we thought about. But because we also knew that Barnum Museum, it's related to one of the families that they have a lot of stuff on, and they know of a few things that we have that over the years they've said, if you guys ever de-accession this, we'd be very interested. So, please let us know. So this is one of those cases where we decided to de-accession this, called up Barnum. Barnum was very happy to take it. So we knew that we could de-accession it because we couldn't take proper care of it anymore, but yet also keep it in public accessibility and send it to somewhere else that is in a, museum setting that they can take care of. And also, if for any reason we ever want to borrow it back, we can always call them and see if we can borrow it, which is the other thing to think about if you have a thing that is so awesome and priceless, but you don't really want to get rid of it, but you can't take care of it. If you find another museum that can be the caretaker for that item, it's nothing that says, they wouldn't let you borrow it back for something that you suddenly decided you wanted to do. So in this case, we de-accessioned this sleigh, and back to my poor image quality talk. But it's in good hands now. So if we ever want to borrow it, we can. If we ever have a researcher that comes in and says, I'm showing this to, researching my family and all this stuff, and I need to see this sleigh, we can send them over there. Sorry, I'm covering up my little close button. There we go. So my list of what to think about for this. Okay, things are dangerous, no longer meet the parameters of the museum. You can't take care of it. There's always kind of along the lines of the collection parameters. You don't have any history of it. You don't know where it came from. You don't know who gave it to you. You don't know who owned it. It's old, but what does it tell you about your mission? You don't really know. Or does it give any picture for the bigger story? It's one of those that sometimes you can stretch your mission a little bit. Like I said, we sometimes tend to say greater Fairfield because of the way our property or, town lines were drawn. So if there's something that's right in not Stratford, but Stratfield, like right on the edge of Bridgeport, those property lines moved it. So if there's no other place that something can go, like if it's not appropriate at Housatonic, or if it's not appropriate at Barnum or something like that, but it's very important to this region, yeah, we'll stretch that a little bit. But there's a lot of stuff in the collection that we don't know why it was interesting, because it's cool, but we don't know that it necessarily even belonged to Greater Fairfield. So that's something to look at. In the de-accessioning process and getting rid of things, keep your process open and transparent. Don't try to go de-accessioning, like it's a dirty word and you're trying to hide it. Talk to people about it and give them reasons of why you're doing this and how you're doing it. De-accessioning is not easy. It's kind of a pain. It can be very time consuming. But in the end, as long as all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted, you'll eventually have more space, more room, less of a worry about certain things. Be sure you have a procedure set. it should be, the basic procedure should be in your collections policy. It doesn't have to go step by step, but you should have, must be recommended and approved by the director, must go to the collections committee if you haven't, must be approved by the board, go through all the steps in your policy. So that way you can say, if anyone ever asks questions, you can say, yes, it's right here in our policy. This is how we do it. Make sure people are following those steps. Make sure the actual steps are documented in your own workflow, and make sure people are following that. Never delete records out of your database for things that were de-accessioned. Don't tear up old catalog cards. Don't throw out object files. That is a part of the permanent record and the institutional history and institutional archives. So always, always, always keep that. You always want to be able to document the full process. Use spreadsheets to keep track of this stuff and save those too. Worksheets are always good. We had, I have it here somewhere. I gotta find it for you and share it. We had I was at Connecticut Historical, and there was a, I didn't open it. Hold on, let me keep this open so it lets me want to share it. Scrolling down. So we were doing de-accesioning at CHS, and it was kind of bigger ticket items, part of a couple of projects that were going on. So we had a process, and it was, transparent. We went through it, and it was fine. But we had a lawyer on our collections committee who very helpfully created a worksheet for us. It used to be 4 pages. That is not easy. It was really great. It's lawyers, so they're going to be really, really detailed. I condensed it down to 2 pages, like a front and a back, and made it as, not broad's not the right word, but inclusive of everything that you wanted to do. So if we have something that we want to get rid of, usually I use this for bigger items, both physically and of importance. So we de-accessioned some literally large items from the collection when we moved offsite storage a few years ago, but also did a review of some of our chairs and some of our furniture a couple years after that. And those things, they're a little bit more noticeable when you can't find it, I guess is the way to say it. So I wanted to make sure that we knew exactly what had happened to them and went through the process. Plus, at that point in my time at Fairfield, I didn't know as much about the collection as I do now. So there were some things that I wanted to make sure I went in and researched and looked up. And it's pretty straightforward, the name, the location, brief details, dimensions are helpful. Overall condition, that'll help you determine, no treatment, oh, it's great, or urgent, no, this is not great. Recommended if it's de-accessioned, why it should be de-accessioned, a little place for notes, how it should be disposed of. Also, records review. Records review is important, so you can say that you looked at it to see if you knew where it came from, who gave it to you. Was it a purchase, a bequest, a loan, a transfer? Do you have the paperwork for it? Do you have the deed of gift? Do you have a deposit agreement? Do you have a copy of the will from the bequest? Also, was donor notification required or not required? Usually it's not required, but every once in a while you'll get somebody that either years ago said this or will say now, oh, if you ever get rid of it, please let the family know. Okay, I don't like to do that, but I'm more than happy if it, helps them out. We do always put it on the onus of the donor to keep that information current. So if they move, if they, their next contact is a child or sister or sibling or brother, or whatever, they need to let us know what that contact information is. So we're not having to go and chase somebody down. Because that can be super time consuming also. Are there any limitations or restrictions on disposal of the item? Because there could be, even just for religious purposes, or it could be something that you can't dispose of a thing in a certain way. could be a US flag, could be a flag that was used over someone's coffin at their funeral. There's limitations over how you dispose of American flags, kind of thing. So what is that? What was the decision on this? Was it, yep, it's approved, we want to do this, or hold for future review? This is the thing I like about having the worksheet, especially for bigger items. We have a few things that are like clocks that are pieces of furniture that we couldn't necessarily find all the information that we needed, so it's hold for future review. This worksheet, when we're done with it, is put into the permanent object file, so you can always go back, look at the file. You're looking at the clock 5 years later, like, oh God, weren't we going to de-accession this? Why do we have this? You can go back to the file, look at the sheet and go, oh, we have to review it again. Or it's not approved or something else happens, like down here, if not approved, there's a note of why you didn't want to de-accession it. So it's good to have that in the record, so you're not duplicating work 5 years later and looking at it again and calling in people to review, because you have the information right here. Also have the dates of the sign-offs from everybody, executive director, committee, board, trustees, any comments, if donor notification was needed. And then also documentation and disposition. Do you have it photographed? Where did it go? AAM talks about, the typical places to get rid of things and how to get rid of them. Auction is usually the most common and encouraged. There's no wiggle room for anything sketchy going on. Never sell to staff, never sell to board members, even if it's something that they love. You can't go in there and have, the board Joe Schmo going, I collect tea tables. See, if you're de-accessioning that, I'll buy that from you. No, it's not. It just keeps everybody above board and honest. So there's no accusation of any sketchiness anywhere along the line. It's all in, guidelines for staff and boards and things like that. That kind of thing is not allowed. Oh, I had another thought about that as I was saying it with the loan to confident purchase auction. Oh, so as you're looking at the records review, and if you have the gift, if you have the deed of gift and all that. So also we all have, I don't know where this came from. It's just always been here. I have no record of it. I have an inventory from the 80s and that's about it. You don't necessarily have clear title to it. So you have to go through steps for de-accessioning that are slightly different than if it was something that you have a clear title and deed of gift for. So a few years ago, the state librarian and a couple of folks at CHS actually went through and worked on getting a law passed in Connecticut for abandoned property, like museum abandoned property. And I should go to the chat because you put the right thing up. Hold on, let me hop over there.
I put it in there. The abandoned property one.
Yeah, my mouse is well, it's my trackpad's being wonky. Okay, there we go. So Jody very nicely put the link in. So this is the abandoned property law for the state of Connecticut. The guidelines when it's abandoned property. This was kind of came about thinking about abandoned loans, primarily, that you go through your collection and it's got that, oh, we borrowed this for this exhibit back in 1980. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Nobody ever came back for it, but you still need to do something about it. And especially with things like abandoned loans, somebody owns it. So you really need to try to return it to the rightful owner, which can be a lot of steps, but it does also go towards things that are in your museum and you have no idea where they came from. So it's a really interesting document. It's like, any legal document. It's long and got a lot of stuff, but it's really interesting and gives you a really good guideline of what is considered abandoned property, what to do with it, and, maintenance of your records in the museum. One of the best things you can do, because I can't remember where it is in here, because I actually read it in ages, I have to go back one of these days, is proving how long you've owned it. So anytime you have any kind of proof of how long your institution has had an object is helpful. That's why even if I put in my records, I'll put in objects that I don't actually know where they are, but I know it's very likely we have it, but I do make a very specific note in the record about, not location unknown unknown at time of entry. So that's kind of proving that no, I don't know where it is. I can't put hands on it, but it also goes back to that little, line that we have in locations for inventory. If you've literally seen something and put eyes on it, make a note that you did, so you know that you've had it, even especially if it's a non-accession thing. So I put non-accession stuff into my database until we determine what to do with it. But then I can say, oh, I've had it since this. And that other one that you say, oh, I've just got a tag from an inventory in the 80s, that inventory from the 80s proves it was in your museum since that time. When we did our inventory in the 80s, they went through all these little individual worksheets. Even if they're not informative, they have what it is, they have the number that they assigned it for the inventory, and they dated it. They signed and dated it, so we know that it was in the collection at that time. So that can come up as a question. This gives you a checklist and steps on how to try to find the original owner / lender, more so. Obviously, if there's something that's been sitting on the shelf and you have no information on it, you kind of don't have any information on it. There's not anywhere to even go to say that you have this thing and try to find the rightful owner unless they have some kind of proof that they owned it. It's very interesting. It touches on NAGPRA stuff, loan agreements and all that. So it's very thorough. It's honestly one of the better ones that I've seen out there. Not every state has this. There's a listing somewhere and I had a link and that link no longer works either. But there's really interesting list of what states have abandoned property laws and what don't. So this is kind of some of the steps are a pain, some of it is helpful. Again, de-accessioning is not an easy process necessarily. Actually, there was a old, I can't even remember how old loan at CHS that we always knew was there and just never had a chance to work on it. My successor up there, she had a chance and had the time and wherewithal, might have had an intern too, I don't remember, to go through and try to find the owner. She found the owner and returned the chair to one of her descendants. And the day she told me that, I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I feel like I can cross something off my list and I don't even work there anymore. But I have that like, oh, yay, that's done. I'm so happy for you. So let me shrink this bit down. So that's that, very helpful. Again, lots of steps, kind of a pain, but it's fine. Let's see. Oh, a thing about kind of this and like that worksheet thing. When you're de-accessioning and keeping lists and keeping Excel records, when it comes to stuff, like I said, it's either big furniture, big pieces of paper, important items, I'll use that worksheet. If you're de-accessioning a lot of like duplicate postcards, don't fill out a sheet for every single one. It's okay. If you want to really track, if you have numbers, if you have donation stuff from them, if you want, fill out an Excel sheet and just, 2001.1, well, that's a bad example. 1950.1.1, duplicate, poor condition, whatever. And just, you can put it through to your collections committee or your board as list of postcards that are not relevant because whatever, here's our list if you want to look at it. And they can approve or deny from there. Things like that, but you have the bulk of stuff like that. It's not really worth doing that. We did a costume review before I got there at Fairfield in 2015 and created an Excel spreadsheet with all the information on it. I still use that pretty often because it's very informative. Especially as I'm going through old records and looking at those cards going, do I have this? It sounds familiar, but I don't know. And I can go through that old list. And it also gives the reasons why it should have been de-accessioned, whether it was actually sent to auction. One thing I don't know about, I have pulled things back from de-accession that I don't want to get rid of. There's been a couple of costumes there's an adorable dress from the 60s, and it's not just because I think it's adorable, it's a really good piece of its time. It's very illustrative of the 60s. It's in great condition. We know who owned it. She lived in Fairfield. She would have worn it in Fairfield. And if I remember correctly, it was also purchased in Fairfield. Like, she knew which store it came from. So the only reason I can think of why it was put into the pipeline is somebody didn't think it was old enough because it was from the 60s. I don't know. But I've pulled that back. I'm not sure, and I keep meaning to do some research on how you do that and what the process is. Can you give it its old accession number? Do you just ignore that it was de-accession? I don't know. If anyone ever finds the answer to that, let me see. Like, and a couple other things. As far as Connecticut collections goes and how you can use that in the system to track this kind of stuff. Here's my sleigh. You've got on your admin info page, your object status, not exceptioned anymore. So you can update something new all the time. There's this handy little to de-accession button down here, which is a great way of tracking things as you're going through.
Diane,
Or whatever. Yes.
we're not seeing CT collection.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Every once in a while, I think about just always sharing my screen, and then that would be even more confusing because I have too much open. Okay, here we are. Thank you. So on the admin info page, you've got the list and the object status. You got this really handy to de-accession button. So especially if you're going through things in the collection, either for an exhibit or just not related to the project you're working on, and so why do I have this? You know what? We don't need this. You can click that little to de-accession button and search for it later on. So when you're ready to kind of work your way through that, you can search for the items that you have run across. There's a bunch of costumes that I've gone through, and if they weren't in there as a possible de-accession, I've clicked on that little to de-accession to figure out. I was putting that in for all of those hair combs and things as I was looking up the numbers. If they were in here, I was marking that off. If you, I had them grouped together in a set as well back in 23. So once you click off, so you've got your de-accession status down here. Once you click off this little de-accession box, all these other boxes down here will show up. Let me go over one so you can see. I'm sure you guys have seen it. Unless I pulled up a bunch of de-accession stuff. Yeah, so you've got your just plain de-accession status here, and whether something's de-accession. So once it's officially de-accessioned, click that off, and you'll have all these other fields to fill in. The date that it was de-accessioned, the date it was disposed of, even more importantly, to make sure you know that you don't have to deal with it anymore. I have a ton of stuff from that costume thing that it's not quite left the building yet. A bunch of stuff has, but we did not go through a lot of the stuff that are stored on site. So we have to work our way through that at some point. De-accession type, it has all the common types of auction. It was disposed of, like thrown out, like those hair combs are going to get disposed of. If we decided to make an exhibition prop or use it in our teaching collection, or if we transferred it. So that sleigh is a transfer, and make sure who is authorized by, usually the board, it's the highest level, we'll put the board of directors there, and then any de-accession notes. And I can go back to the sleigh. And once you do click that off and fill it in, you will see that big red de-accession at the top and what the date was that it was actually de-accessioned. So in case of this, Got too large for transfer to new 2023 offsite storage, barn museum willing to accept this as they have other relevant collections there. Works great. I also have, if I've sent something to an auction, I put the name of the auction house in there. So I have the date that it was disposed of, and I put sent to Augusta Auctions on this date, so I can look it up and know. I have also put for things that I trip across that I've never seen and you can't find a record of. I'll put research to unknown if this was disposed of, research, see if it's still in the building, whatever notes you need to put in for yourself. It's handy to put there. Sometimes too, if you're at the point of just checking off this little 2D accession and you're not, it's not been de-accessioned, so your little notes fields aren't opened up yet, you can always put things right in the regular notes fields. And as I do with a lot of things, I didn't do it in this one. I'll put like a title with all of my notes. This is off of my last museum and my predecessor there. And it's really helpful. Just I can skim down and go, oh, related objects, no, de-accession, no. Oh, what did I say about de-accessioning? So it's kind of helpful to put that in there, kind of differentiate what you're looking for. Let me hop back to location for a second. And I definitely have been, as I'm going through moving stuff around at my offsite location, putting in a note like here in their current location. I made a note right in there that said sleigh too large for transfer, and the same note that I used for the de-accession part shows up there. But if you're going through something, especially something that's odd or you feel you might want to find, just put that inventory by in there so you know that you saw it. And then you're not crazy and your system's not kidding you. You know you saw it in 09, or something like that. Little side note as a tip, because I'm doing a lot of inventory stuff, I put a alternate name in for myself because this does link to your entities. So I put an alternate thing in for myself of my initials, so I don't have to type my whole name out every time to do it. I just put in DL as an alternate name. So I'll show up and I can select myself. My name's very short, but just faster to be able to do it. Let's see. Anyone have, I think that's all I have. I'm going to stop recording and then we can ask questions.